Thank you, CSR Works, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this interesting session. So indeed, it is an honor and privilege to have co-panelists like the current team. So basically, agriculture, as you know, is one of the most important economic factor or the most important region for India to grow, and that will be continuing in the future, despite GDP is only 14 to 16%, but it supports a huge population. And this population needs to grow, and this population needs to earn the livelihoods in a very decent manner. And that's the important role, that's where the CSRs comes into. That is the investment, catalytic investment that helps the public sector, the government to unlock and create a multiplier effect. So currently, most of you may be knowing that 50% of the Indian population is rural and they are dependent on agriculture. And most of the rural poor are into agriculture domain. And despite multiple attempts that has been happening over the past few decades to increase the income of farmers, many of the challenges remains, and the market access and the value realization that happen after the post-harvest stages, that is mostly not much successful for the smallholders that way. And there has been a lot of structures also, cooperatives, etc. FPO is the current flavor of the season, where the government is promoting different cooperative collectives so that they are aggregating their produce and getting better bargaining power in the market. So currently the context is very challenging for the agriculture sector as a whole, because it needs a huge investment, and that investments can come from the private sector plus the CSR alongside with the Indian budget that mostly the state provision for. And the idea is that how can we create a, scenario or a public policy environment where a rural family can get their decent livelihood within their village, within their farm, and not needing to migrate to the urban area where they become basically a construction laborer or some other unskilled laborer. So in that context, basically it becomes very important that CSR, multilateral bodies, private sector, academic institution, everybody comes together and create a enabling environment for the smallholders to create such an environment. So in this context, basically, I would invite one by one to all the panelist members to share their work and to share their thoughts on this view. So first of all, I would ask Ms. Aman Pannu from DCM Shriram Foundation to share their views for a few minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi, and a very good morning to everyone. So I'll just give you a brief background on the work that DCM Shriram Foundation is doing specifically on the agriculture portfolio. Right now, all of us understand that water is something which is very, very key, and so is soil when we are talking about agriculture. So as DCM Shriram Foundation, we are focusing at the confluence of water and agriculture. Right? If we look at two important data points, about 70% of the water withdrawal is actually going into agriculture globally, right? And 60% of that gets wasted because of inefficient application. So for us, I think this was the problem statement that we were looking at, that how can we look at sustainable practices which can actually look at saving of water and layering that with water conservation also, because naturally when we are talking about increasing water surface storage and groundwater level, there is a correlation to irrigation, which becomes an area which is very important, not only from India's perspective, but globally also, right? So now there are two things that we are talking about. You know, there is a two-pronged approach when we look at CSR and agriculture. One is from creating these lighthouses of excellence, right? So all corporates or foundations who are working on agriculture are actually trying to create these lighthouses on the ground by giving better package of practices to the farmers, by creating a market linkage, making sure that, you know, you're creating the entire cycle for the farmer and looking specifically at the small and the marginal farmers while we are doing this. And the second piece, I think, which is very, very important is actually the advocacy piece. Because if we are going to be only working in silos and just creating our own lighthouses or not making it replicable or sustainable, the impact is not going to reach the small and marginal farmers, right? From an India perspective, I think all of us know the numbers, that there are about 15 crore farming families. There's about 86% of that is the small and marginal farmers who have less than 2 hectares of land. right? With these numbers, unless we go to scale, we are not going to be able to reach numbers, right? So I think as CSR, our role cannot only be limited to creating these lighthouses. So specifically, to give you an example, like in Uttar Pradesh, so for us, our geographies are Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Gujarat, right? In Uttar Pradesh, we are doing a project on specifically on paddy and the wheat cycle. Because again, paddy is a high water intensive crop, on how sustainable practices could be used to save water, right? And saying scientifically measuring the water saving there, looking at the fact that working with experts, right? So we work with ISAP on this project. We work with IRI, it's a multi-stakeholder project. We work with IRI and IFC on the ground on these projects to be able, and wherever I think foundations, corporates are working, Nashri, for us, the end goal is to improve the productivity and profitability of the farmer, but making sure that there are sub-cycles also, or sub-layers that we're creating when we're looking at this overall objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Aman, for sharing your work with the DCM Shriram Foundation. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Amit Kumar Singh, who has vast experience in working in multiple donor projects and value chain area, to share his opening remarks. Amit.
Thank you, Ravi. I belong to an organization called Ayekart, A-Y-K-A-R-T, and we solved the most critical problem in the value chain, that is marketing. So we started with marketing, and we are giving access to finance to farmers through NBFC partners. Now I'll come to the topic, value chain. So post Russia and Ukraine war, and after the pandemic, we realized our potential of, in agriculture. And entire world is looking at us. India can become a food hub for entire world. So how that will happen? That will happen only when the organizations, they're working, they'll take the value chain approach. And government has to create that conducive ecosystem so that, whatever FPOs or any form of institution that is being created at the ground level, they can sustain. So the horizontal integration is happening. Number of FPOs are coming up, but the vertical integration is not happening. If you want farmers or FPOs just to do a job work or become an aggregator, they won't be making any profit. If you look at the total consumer price, farmers' share is hardly 25%. So if we want our farmers to remain in agriculture, so their income has to be increased. And that can happen when you take the value chain approach. So the FPO has to take value chain functions. I'll give you one example of coffee. So when we started working, in last organization, when we started working in coffee, so we saw that farmers, they are selling the cherry. So they were getting around 80 rupees, 80 to 90 rupees. So first intervention we did was, we helped them getting, the pillars where they can get the wet parchment. And next year, we gave them tarpaulin seeds and the moisture meter. And, they, from 80 to 280, they started getting 280, although there was some weight loss and everything. But look at the remuneration, how much farmer they are getting now. And another value addition this year we did, that dehulling, because many of the buyers like, Tata Coffee, Mudra Coffee, they want dehulled dry parchment. So what we did, and to create an impact in agriculture, you did not have to do a big investment. With a smaller investment, you can create a big impact. And that is, we saw it in coffee. Again in cashew. The cashew apple, the farmers, they used to throw it. We got the technology, it was available with Kerala University. Now they are making, the cashew apple soda. That is selling like a hot cake. So you need to go into the ground and get that feel. Why it is not happening? Now I'll come to the CSR and value chain. The major problem is agriculture has not been mentioned as a separate subject in the Schedule 7. It's a part of the rural development. So I'm not criticizing anyone who are working in health education, but you cannot ignore agriculture. And you have seen, if you want to feed the nation and if you want to become, the food hub for the world, we'll have to take the agriculture. Whatever initiative we will do in the villages through your CSR fund, that will not sustain for a longer period of time if you ignore agriculture. If you take agriculture, then everything will, fall in line. Because first, their family, then nation, then world. So that investment is needed. Why it is not happening? Because many of the CSR, they have, many corporations, they have their own foundation. But they'll have to involve the grassroots NGOs, CSOs, so that they can mobilize the community. Until unless you mobilize them, they will not come together. So aggregation is a problem. And we are creating FPOs. So we have created FPOs. We are giving them market linkage. But are our farmers, are they ready? Are they FPO ready? Why, being a farmer, I'll sell my produce through FPOs? No, because I need to see that stickiness. So there will have to work, simultaneously with farmers as well as FPOs. So one is that mobilization. Second is strengthening the FPOs. Third one is the value chain functions. So if they are today supplying a particular commodity, say, tomatoes, so, the wastage, the harvest, post-harvest losses, where those tomatoes are going? Can they do some processing, drying? Can they convert it into powder? So technologies are available. It is still lying with lab. It is not going to land. So you need to, create that ecosystem where you bring universities, you bring CSOs, you bring technical agencies, and your work should be to coordinate this ecosystem partners. Then only I think this CSR and value chain, CSR fund in value chain can create multiplier impact. Thank you, Raviji.
Thank you, Amit, for sharing your experience in value chain and the CSR rules. Now I invite Dr. Lopamudra to speak about her work with Hindalco, with tribal communities and women in agriculture in Odisha. Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Very good morning to everyone. I'll start from where Ravi started, saying 50% of our population is in farming. So 3 out of 4 women farmers had to seek permission to move outside the community, and only half of them could go out unaccompanied. Furthermore, only 17% of women reported making an independent financial decisions in the past 1 year. This two conjunction marred the women's ability to participate in farmers' collectives, as they are largely confined to the 4 walls in every aspect, but in farming, as we are talking today, with poor access to market and limited financial autonomy, as Amit ji had said, that these FPOs and value chain, agri value chain that we wanted to create is very difficult in this context. The gender gap in knowledge of agricultural practices such as soil preparation, you talk about crop rotation, Aman talked about the water, because land augmentation and water source creation for farming is the number 1 aspect before we start. This irrigation, storage of high quality, seeds. And further, women's subjunction to FPOs, they continue to be farm laborers. So we'll focus more on why women, if women are in farming, what changes can happen, rather than being shareholder. So they are laborer, they are not shareholders or the board members of the FPOs. Now, one of these studies recently announced that 10,000 FPO schemes isn't gender transformative in nature and ignores women farmers. This baseline study is done by Mandi project, also found that 3% of FPOs has reserved board member for women. So overall, I wanted to give certain figures. That data from SFAC and NABARD and other agencies suggest that 15% of total members of FPOs in the state are women. Can you imagine? Now, when we are talking about farming, and if you go any part of the country, you will see women in farming. Women is working in the field. but that is not happening. You can't see women as a board member of an FPO or an active land holding. Also, women hardly have women do have land holdings. They are actually a laborer. So this is the thought that we at Hindalco had, and we then worked. Convergence is very, very important, and not duplicating government's efforts or government schemes. We have started, and in further I would brief and not take much time on the context setting. So this is what would be Hindalco's context when we talk about agri value chain and women in farming, and how we are going ahead and promoting farming.
Thank you for highlighting women in agriculture issue. Now I would request Dr. Sayendra Singh Arya to share his experience in agriculture skilling. Yeah.
Morning, everybody. Skill India mission is almost 10 years old, and sector skill councils, and I represent one for agriculture. They are basically industry-driven body, but having compulsory participation of government and training institutions, and they have played a very active role in the last 10 years. Talking about agriculture, in fact, when sector skill councils were envisaged by the Planning Commission, way back in 2010, agriculture was not even looked at, because it seems they talked about skilling in context of the organized workforce, whereas Indian agriculture is basically unorganized, 98% of it. Then the reality dawned upon that if 50% plus workforce is getting constituted by agriculture workforce, there is a need for skilling there, and more so because the traditional knowledge transfer across the generation is on the decline, and rather it has stopped. Gone are the days when kids used to spend considerable period of time with their parents in the field and getting to learn things. So there is a need of external intervention. Secondly, India is the largest producer of milk, fruits and vegetable, a big aquaculture player. When you see skilling, it is as low as less than 0.5% access of formal skill training for the agriculture workers, both put together, the agriculture cultivators and laborers. Also, there is, the attrition of youth from agriculture is a global phenomenon, not restricted to India. But what we need to realize is that agriculture is going to be the largest employment sector, even 15 years henceforth. Though the numbers say that, in the next census, it's the number of agriculture workforce is expected to decline from 25 crore to 19 crore, but it will take many more years to, come below 33% of the workforce. We also need to realize that while youth might be moving out of agriculture, there are agricultural value chains which are coming. If the urban consumption of dairy, poultry, fishery produce is coming, so are the, job roles creating in that particular value chain. Also, we need to realize the fact that if this attrition and the food security of the nation has to be ensured, and CSR work in the field of livelihood, and impact has to be made, we need to, give the vocational identity to the people who do agriculture. यहाँ से 60 किलोमीटर दूर आप गांव में जाएंगे तो शायद जो 2 मुर्रा बफेलो रखता होगा उसको शायद रिश्ता नहीं मिलता, लेकिन अगर कोई 11,000 10,000 की नौकरी शहर में करता है तो उसका रिश्ता पहले हो जाता है. So there, we need to make the rural youth realize the potential of entrepreneurship कि आप 2 मुर्रा बफेलो से 17-16 हज़ार कमा सकते हैं, बनस्पत 11,000, जो कि काफ़ी हार्डशिप से आ सकता है. Secondly, we need to glamorize the sector by making it technology oriented. So only when there is a use of smartphone or something, a rural youth has got his own aspiration, and there is nothing wrong about it. They also want to go for less drudgery job role. They also want to wear jeans, and perfectly fine. So why not to, use the tools that appeal to them so that they see the, entrepreneurship potential over here, and we need to put in that effort. In the skilling journey, of course, we have developed 186 job roles which are helping giving identity. We have done about 1.1 million trainings as we speak. And now agriculture is also being taken up in schools in 9th, 10th standard as one subject, and 11th, 12th as second job role. We are operating in about 2,400 schools in 25 states. It is also being promoted in community colleges and BWalk institutions. I appeal to the CSR foundations, the funding organization, and the implementing partners to come forward and participate in this mission. Because what has happened is, in skilling mission, we have just seen that for-profit institutions are coming. But the good not-for-profit institutions are not coming. Maybe they are so accustomed to the project-based system. Grant आया, UC दिया काम, यहाँ खत्म होता है. Skilling जो schemes हैं, वो ज़्यादातर reward schemes हैं. Phased manner में उसका payment हुआ और आपने उसका एक placement outcome दिखाया और पैसा आया. Placement outcome की जब मैं बात करता हूँ, you should not restrict that placement means wage-based employment. Government is very clear when they talk about placement in skilling, they talk about wage employment and self-employment. Amit ji has already touched upon agriculture के अंदर में अगर आपको project करना होता तो ज़्यादातर आप you will show it under rural development or vocational education or environment piece. So, we are looking out for good training partners, and in case some funding organization wants to look at Sector Skill Council as the implementing agencies, they have got all kind of approvals. And with the tightening of CSR rules, they might be a good fitment for you also because they are strictly under the monitoring of, their audits are done by CHEM paneled auditors, and they have got all the contents. I think one area where the CSR foundations and implementing organizations can work is agriculture happens at the state level, at a local level. There is a lot of dearth for the content in the regional languages. So we are making the content in English, Hindi. We do work in 13 languages, but I don't have the content or the, some animation clips or audio visuals in the regional languages. So we really look forward to good institutions to work with us in this particular space, and I'm here to answer more of your questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sayendra. Very interesting observation, and skilling as a self-placement opportunity also for the farmers and the next generation youth. Now, as going forward, mostly my first question will be with Dr. Lopamudra. You have been working in the remote area of Odisha and other states through your programs. So there has been a role of government investment in agriculture and other area, but how do you see the role of CSR in the district and below level where actual implementation of the projects happens? So is there any convergence between the implementation program of CSR and government, and how does it can create a multiplier effect? Some views on it, yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. That's a very apt question that you have asked. CSR is a concept where business take responsibilities for their impact on the environmental and the society. As you said, how we have, and I left my first bit saying, Hindalco, how they are working. It's a very concept that I mentioned earlier, that we work and we believe in working in convergence. So we have spent 20%, then we ensure that rest 80% comes from in a project comes from the government convergence. So the projects that we work in farming sector is mostly the schemes that is already government is doing in the state level and in national level, and how we can bring those national level and state level schemes to the block level and GP levels, the Gram Panchayat levels. So one of such program of Government of Odisha is APC, the Agro Production Cluster, which Bharat Rural Livelihood Foundation has an MOU with the Government of Odisha to implement this APC back in every block and in aspirational districts like Kalahandi, Rayagada in Odisha. They are in much need because it's a tribal populated belt, and mostly see women in farming. So the concept is APC, where 18 government departments are converging, like ITDA, horticulture, you talk about agriculture, you talk about watershed, Manrega is there. So again, the concept is we bring in, I was just discussing prior to this, saying in COVID times, farmer is in, maybe 100 kilometers away from the district headquarters and not aware of the schemes that horticulture is providing or agriculture department is providing at times of COVID or times of Rabi and Kharif time. So how can we bring in those schemes to the grassroots level farmers? Or the other thing is, how can we from conventional farming, we can take them to a more technologically driven and more, commercial champion crops. So APC's concept is that we identify champion crop, we identify, we first form the community institutions, that is farmer PGs, mostly women PGs. APC focuses on women PGs. So till date, we have made 51 women PGs, both in Raigada and Kalahandi districts. So then these women PGs are taught to get a lot of subsidies, how to fill up the forms, there's a chart saying every season, what are the crops, what are this year crops. So the team that works, and again, I was talking to Amitji, how corporate can empower the agency or the implementing agency that works on ground. So we have signed an MOU with BRLA, Bharat Rural Livelihood Foundation. Further, the CSO partner like CYSD in Odisha and Janasahajya in Raigada and Kalahandi simultaneously, they are working on ground with 14 manpower. With our CSR fund, what we are trying to do is support this implementing agency people so that they can actually bring in those schemes that is available with the government to our core areas where we are working. So we have a KPIs, like we have to make nano-wadis, how many water structure, as rightly Aman has mentioned, that water and land augmentation is very important. How through MGNRGA we are also addressing SDG 1 and 2. And selecting these PGs then select champion crops, and this champion crop again grown in a cluster level more than, because looking at the undulation of the land and hilly terrain, you cannot have one crop in large area. So minimum 80 to last year, this season we have done potatoes they never used to do. So introducing new crop, and 80 acres we did potatoes. And again, as Amitji said, value chain. So APC's concept is how from the strengthening, making the land augmentation, water, strengthening community institution, empowering community institution to get those schemes from the government, and having those, identifying as a collective, how to identify a champion crop or a commercial crop, maybe oil seed, maybe potato, because generally in that belt we grow rice and millet, and sometimes flax seeds. But then even for those champion crops, how the value chain, NTFP is one of the major value chain where we identify the team, the CSO, identify the vendors, and vendor comes to their doorstep to the PG, and PG as a collective sells it. So the income of the PG increases and every woman gets the, so financially our goal is how we can empower women, plus how we can create an ecosystem of farming, agri value chain in our area. So that is one aspect. Also where there is no, people don't have land holding pattern, some tribals they don't have. So how animal husbandry can be, given, backyard poultry, goatry, that is support, that is also part of APC that we are bringing. NTFP, non-timber forest product, how to collectively they collect those NTFP product, then value adding tamarind, de-seeding the tamarind, making paper plate through ITDS convergence. So yes, we do work with a lot of government convergence, and we work on focus approach under our project Unnat in Odisha.
Thank you, Dr. Lopamudra. It has been very interesting sharing of experience of working at the grassroots level with the government. And mostly, definitely, like most of the funds to the community come from the government through various schemes, either agriculture or wood, etc. So it's an interesting approach that CSOs can leverage also and work closely with government functionaries as well as building the capacities of community. Because the access to government schemes can be one of the way where the benefits of the public funding can be reached to the last mile, and that's where the role of CSOs becomes very important to enable the last mile access of the government schemes and build the capacity of community to access it. So that is very interesting. So now, coming to Mr. Amit, Lopamudra ji talked about the champion crop, A similar thing is going on in UP also, one district, one product, and Government of India has also adopted one district, one product. And your large experience, like there are different schemes also, like 10,000 FPO scheme, Agri Infra Fund, integrated horticulture. So how does this, like you see the role of CSR in unlocking excess of, I think, billions of dollars of funding that government is committing through the schemes, and how this convergence can happen between CSR and this government scheme funding at a national level? Amit ji, yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. There are two things mainly. One is government, the two bodies, government and the corporations. So under CSR fund, one can create the lighthouse, the models, and government can scale it. Without government support, nobody can scale to a large number of people, large number of farmers. You cannot scale it. So if you want scale, you need to partner with government. And now government is very open. They are willing to partner. I have seen many MOUs are happening with MORD, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So this is one part. Second is, I'll come to Satyendra ji. He was saying, skill. So also, when you want to upgrade the value chain, you want your funding should go, should create maximum impact. Then it should go in skilling also. How? Good agricultural practices that can enhance, the productivity by 30 to 40%. And this is our ground experience. I have soiled my hand. I have worked directly with the farmers, and I know that can happen. And that needs very small investment. Second, where skilling is required in terms of technology. So if you want that they should also get the fruit of the digital revolution, then they should know the, this use of mobile and all. Because until unless they use it, you cannot reach out to large number of farmers. So that is second. Third one is, government has, come up with 10,000 FPO policy. We need to select the value chain, then go back to formation of FPOs. What we are doing, we are blindly forming FPOs, then we are looking for market. Because some farmers, they are growing 5 kilos of tomato, some small quantity of potatoes, that cannot be sold. But if there is a quantity, we can assure quality and they can fetch a better price. Ayekart, they started their operation in September. They did a business of 139 crores, just remaining in, just doing the trading. So they are giving access to finance. They are assuring market. How we are assuring market? So we are helping FPOs to get that scale. And Lopaji was talking of potato. Majority in that state, and I also know UP is one of the biggest producer of potato. So majority of the seed potato comes from Punjab and Haryana. Or farmers, they take the local seeds. And there is a technology available with international potato centers and others where farmer can buy it just in 7 rupees. The cost of production of seed potato will be 7 rupees. Now they are purchasing at 35 rupees and they do not know how much will be the germination, how much percentage will be in, will germinate. So you just take up a value chain, think on different bring in different technologies and diversify it. Then I think the investment of government, investment through CSR can bring that multiplier impact.
Thank you, Amit ji, for putting so eloquently. I think building on the Amit ji observations on the value chain approach for the FPO promotion, etc. And as Dr. Satyendra talked about the skilling, and like as we all are aware that the next generation of farmers are not interested in like subsistence level employment or subsistence level of livelihood. They have higher aspirations. They have aspirations like similar to urban youth also. So like Dr. Satyendra, like basically there is a mostly the skilling framework as you talked about is towards the industrial employment opportunities kind of thing. And farming is not like sector that is amenable to industrial rules and regulation kind of thing. So you talked about like creating job roles also. So what do you see that these job roles and the role of CSR in unlocking the capacity building of the farming youth or girls or women in those job roles, what kind of investment you see and what kind this can be facilitated by Agriculture Sector Skill Council in training so that they become a trained qualified manpower or the personal power for the agriculture value chain enterprises. How do you see that? Yeah.
Up till now, mostly the skilling efforts have been supply-led. They have not been demand-led. Industry is still to come forward, and there is a lot of expectation as the new education policy ushers in terms of having apprenticeship from the industry and going for a formalized workforce perspective. So we are trying to make our qualifications in a way that they give identity, employment, and apprenticeship opportunity. You will see more and more formalization of this, but I would like to spend more time on the women front. If we see the broad figures, almost 43% of self-employed farmers and about 33% of agriculture laborers are women. But the land holding with the women is only 13%. When you see the workforce, the dairying activity, 70% of dairy workforce is women. If you see tea, cotton, it's in the range of 48%. If you see vegetable production is 39%. But are we, giving enough effort on that? We also are making an attempt, and we should, go forward that what kind of, capacity building we should do for women. Say, for example, agriculture. They are involved, and that holds true for horticulture as well. They have been involved in sowing, harvesting, pruning, removing weeds, etc. Can we train them for farm mechanization? Recently, we had an interesting initiative from one of the farm mechanization concern where they trained women in tractor operations, proper tractor operations, tractor mechanic. Why not custom hiring agent can be women? Similarly, when we talk about, horticulture, why only routine orchard activities? Can we go for micro irrigation? Can we go for greenhouse operations? Can we go for solar usage or solar drying? Similarly, livestock. We always talk about, she is involved in proper milking, proper feeding, watering. But can we involve her in marketing activities? Similarly, on the contrary, if you say fishery, you will always find women involved in the retail activities of fishery, but not in the production side, which is cage culture, aquaculture. And they can do well. If they can handle a cow or a buffalo, why not fishery? Similarly, we should also look at, that the trend is changing, but not at the pace that we want. Women have exceeded the male counterparts while taking up the undergraduate course in agriculture. But when it comes to the post-graduation or the responsibility positions in agriculture, they are in minority. Just at the PG level, just at the responsibility level. Also, there is feminization of agriculture with, so much of urban migration happening. We need to, that's why the capacity building is very, very important. We also should consider the fact that women have got a lot of, very less access to inputs in agriculture, less access to, credit, or less access to service, less access to insurance, less access to mobile phones. So, till the time we don't address these factors, their full utilization in agriculture might not happen. So, we need a gender-sensitive approach in agriculture, providing them equal opportunity, and quite a number of implementing partners here must be working. Can the final outcome be linked with some kind of certification so that they have got a vocational identity and they can also, go for access to credit? Recently, we are now working with NRLM and SRLM कि उनका काफ़ी पशु सखी कृषि सखी पे ट्रेनिंग होता है. आप में से भी कईयों ने वो ट्रेनिंग की होगी, गोपाल रत्न, पशु सखी और कई नामों से वो होता है. क्या लेकिन हम एक प्रॉपर नॉमेनक्लेचर पे उसको कर सकते हैं ताकि जितना भी महिला किसान सशक्तिकरण परियोजना में काम हो रहा है उनको भी वो आइडेंटिटी मिले एंड द वीमेन आर देन काउंटेड एज इकोनॉमिकली प्रोडक्टिव यूनिट्स.
Thank you, Dr. Sayendra Arya, and turning the conversation on feminization of agriculture and women in agriculture. In this context, like I would share, like UNDP approach has been like building capacity of women for the market access. So we are working at the edge of those innovations, and we have created a job role called women sourcing managers and women business managers. There are a whole toolkit which is in public domain. Basically, it enables to women to determine the market pricing and negotiate with the market players or corporates directly. And this program has given very positive results in the community, etc. So we'll speak about it later. Now, like coming to Amanji, mostly we are seeing that women are at the forefront of the agriculture, and the climate resilient agriculture thing is very picking up. Currently, like India is participating in COP27 also, and there are a lot of declaration for the agriculture because it's a greenhouse emission gases. Agriculture is the major contribution also. So how do you see the private sector and the CSR foundations joining hand with the government to promote climate resilient agriculture practices among farmers? The major issue is in the behavior change, and I think your experience of changing the behavior of farmers, either sugarcane farmers or paddy farmers, to use less water and other inputs kind of thing would be very interesting for the audience. Amanji, yeah.
So I think very rightly that in the COP27, there is a lot of conversation going on agriculture because we're naturally not on track to handle the climate change at this point of time, the erratic rainfall, the climate changing, it becoming hotter, having an impact on agriculture at this point of time. I think there's a lot of call out for technologies, practical innovations which can happen, right, which are scalable, which can reach the ground level to the small and the marginal farmers. That I think is a conversation which is happening at the global level. When we take it down to India, and I think it's very important for us to understand that in India, agriculture is a state subject, right? We're talking about 28 mini Indias that we have to deal with. We have to go at each state level, different agro-climatic zones, right? And I mentioned that at our foundation, we work in 3 different geographies, which is Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Uttar Pradesh. And from crops perspective also, where we are looking at sugarcane and we are looking at paddy. Sugarcane as part of our business in UP. We are looking at how the farmer needs to practice sustainable climate resilient practices to be able to save water. That is extremely important to reach this end result because data says that with this climate change, the farmer will lose his income by 15 to 20%. Right? With these data sets, if we are not reaching out to the farmer and helping him on the ground, so for example, in sugarcane, we deal with about 2 lakh farmers, right? In 2 lakh farmers, we have been able to save about, in the last 5 years, about 750 billion liters of water by these sustainable practices. Now, these learnings, if they are shared by us with other corporates, with other foundations to be able to achieve the results, then only we'll be able to do that, right? And we've been having these internal discussions on how we all tend to work in silos. Until sharing happens, right? And this is sharing across all the panelists who are sitting here, all the team members who are sitting here. If it's NGOs, if it's corporates, if it's foundations, then only will we be able to achieve the results that we want, right? We are talking about how important climate resilience is in the SDGs. Out of the 17 SDGs, about 9 directly talks about climate resilience agriculture. So the kind of focus that globally that is there, India needs to take up that to another level, right? We have to go down to the state level as corporates, as foundations, as CSR, not only, and like Amit sir was also saying, we cannot just create our own lighthouses and silos and expect ki ye niche jayega. We have great practices that we have, been able to do that because of agronomic advisory, because of experts that we have. Government itself, and the point that Ravi is making, that if it is not collaborative, if it is not replicable, if it is not sustainable, projects will not reach the ground. The small and marginal farmer is the one who needs the support, right? That 20% reduction in his income is huge. And to be able to do that, the only way is collaboration. How is it the private sector will reach the state government, do this advocacy, work with NGO partners? All of that is a loop which needs to be created, right? And these forums, I think, are very, very important to be able to do that. Like I was just discussing with Lopa also, that they are doing some great work. As corporates also, it's important that we don't feel that, okay, it's about our brand versus their brand. It is important that we go down and we say, okay, what are our learnings? Let's share, let's work together. That's the only way that we will be able to reach scale, right? And Amit sir was talking about the fact that how, if we are thinking that as private sector we can achieve scale, that's not possible. We will have to work with the government. The government has so many feet on ground also. The capacity building of those team members is important. So if CSR funds can be used for those, right? If we are talking about sustainable model, we did a project called Jeetega Kisan in Kota, where we worked for 3 years, right? And after 3 years, we were able to increase the farmers' income by about 25%. Now for us to move out of there, naturally, if there is nobody who's going to help them after we move out, sustainability is gone, right? So it was about working with the government machinery, with the agriculture universities, with the Krishi Vigyan Kendras, and making sure that the learnings or the package of practices that we left behind, or the FIGs that we created, they have somebody to go back to. Right? Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you, Aman, for speaking so much about the climate resilient agriculture and the practices. So now as the time clock is running out, so we must be take that into consideration. So I request Dr. Lopamudra, everyone should make the closing statement in one and a half minutes kind of thing, so that at least we are not delaying the next session. So basically, how do you see the role of gender transformative projects, and how do you see CSR designing gender transformative projects so that women can play a role in, say, marketing, pricing of the produce, and take more control of the value that is created by agriculture?
Ravi, actually, that is what I would like to say, that in all the programs that we should, what we are targeting, we should look at how women can be, for example, in the project that I mentioned, there are agripreneurs. Agripreneurs, I'll give you an example. So some group of women, PG, growing mushrooms. So two tribal girls, youth, has been skilled through EDP training, and now they are having a spun unit. Like women in PGs are started doing NPM, then nursery raising. So these are few of the businesses or entrepreneurship that we could give it to women, and where they actually support the same ecosystem. Now in terms of selling as well, there is a group of FPOs, the women, again, we are ensuring through skilling that they should do these kind of activities, and how can they become a very important part of the entire agri value chain, where they play an important role in earning the finances or economy for them.
Thank you. The questions remains the same. But for Mr. Amit Kumar Singh, since you have a technology experience and you are working with tech, so the gender, climate, tech and agriculture, what is your closing remarks so that more and more women are included in this space and they get a decision power, making power?
Sir, just now Mr. Arya, he said 30 to 70. So I take an average 60% of the work is done by women. So you cannot think of developing anything in agriculture without women. If you want development for 100 years, invest in women. Women should be at the forefront. So just take an example of agar koi family mein, if there's a woman teacher or if she's working, just see, bringing up how that family develops. So if you want to develop agriculture, and if you want the maximum impact of the investment, so we cannot ignore women also, because they are into production, and production can increase only when they are skilled, their investment goes for their upgradation, then only we can think of developing agriculture, and especially when migration is happening. So women are taking that lead, and we are training male farmers. So when just 1 second ka 5 seconds more. So when I used to go to roll out some project, and we used to call women, so they used to say, आपको वुमेन से क्या बात करनी है? Why you want to talk to women? So that's still the mindset. टेक्स्ट बुक में फार्मर में सिर्फ मेल दिखेगा आपको, पोस्टर्स में, होर्डिंग्स में you will never see a women farmer. So हमको भी sensitize, we should get sensitized first. Thank you.